Good morning, everybody. I'm Josh Ellsworth with Stahls TV, and welcome to today's presentation, our last for a week filled of Stahls TV presentations, all about calculating costs and setting selling prices for utilizing CAD-CUT heat transfer films. We have a great turnout today for this very popular subject, and most of the work today is going to be done through like webinar or screen sharing, where we'll walk through a lot of different slides. Examples of garments, even a cost calculator that we've created for you that we'll send to you after the webinar if you fill out the survey, to just try to help you in your business with ultimately making sure you know exactly how much that item costs you to make, you're not missing any components, and you have a good, solid strategy for setting prices. So right now you should just be seeing the Stahls TV calculating cost welcome screen. I'm not on camera at all for this presentation. And I want to point out some other housekeeping things. There is a question box on the right-hand side in your GoToWebinar flyout panel. If you type in questions there throughout the session, they will come directly to me. I will stop at various points throughout the session to take a look at those, try to address any pertinent questions to the group. And if we don't get to your question, we'll take a look at it afterwards and hopefully be able to respond to you right away. So with that, as always, I'd like to get a gauge on who we have in the audience today so I can present concepts to the group. And the first thing I want to know is, do you own a vinyl cutter and a heat press? So read through the answers. You can only select one. Obviously, things are a little different if you own a vinyl cutter and can cut your own CAD-CUT designs versus if you just have a heat press and order the designs pre-cut for you. And then also, if you just have a vinyl cutter, of course, you'll need a heat press to complete these applications. But we have some great packages going on this month through Stahls that I'll mention throughout the presentation. Looks like 86% of our audience has voted. 87%, close that off. Share the results. Okay, so 88% own both a cutter and press, 10% just press, and 2% just cutter. So everybody has one or the other, which is great. Okay, one more question I want to ask that'll be pertinent to the info I present today is, how many employees work at your business? Okay, looks like 87% has voted, 89%. All right, we'll go ahead and close that off. Let me share the results and jot them down here so I can remember them. So 80% have 1, 2, 3 employees. 13% is 4 to 9. 3%, 10 to 19. And 5%, 20 plus. Okay, excellent. So the majority of small businesses with us today. Okay, so good. That'll give me a good track to run on when I'm relating concepts for pricing strategies. We'll relate back to that information. So first, let me start off by just showing you a quick cost calculator that we'll reference throughout the session. So I'm going to kind of navigate through this and explain what's happening. Let me make sure my screen's playing. Yep, we're good. Okay. So this is a cost calculator sheet that if you complete the survey at the close of the session, which is 7 questions, and answer yes to you want the cost calculator, I will email it to you this afternoon that you can use it in your business. I think it'll be very beneficial. It is the most up-to-date one that I just completed at the end of September. So we actually did this for a trade show to speak directly to people that were looking to invest in perhaps a heat press and a vinyl cutter package. So there is one tab on the package that we show to folks that don't have a cutter or a heat press so they can calculate their total investment in equipment and how many jobs they need to complete in order to pay off their equipment. So just a basic investment if you don't have any of the equipment, you know, to get a cutter and a heat press, you're looking somewhere around $4,100 for a good high-end package of, you know, the cutter we recommend, the heat press we recommend, and we'll start to see once we start to put stuff into our cost calculator how many pieces it'll take to pay off that investment. Then, of course, if you're just looking for a cutter or a heat press, you can pull some cost out of here and ultimately have about a $2,000 investment into either one of those to pay off with the profit from your jobs. And of course, once we already have that equipment, we want to work towards paying off the actual investment. So the majority of this cost calculator is designed to, after you have your investment paid off and you just want to make sure you're making adequate profit and charging appropriately, there are 2 tabs in here that we'll go through today. One is business info. This is where we'll enter key detail about the materials, the heat transfer materials that we're cutting on a vinyl cutter. If you have your own cutter, you're able to enter the average landed cost per yard, which we'll discuss in depth, and the roll width to make sure you have a good gauge for your cost of material. And then you'll also be able to enter key information like hourly rates paid to different employees in the production process to calculate labor rates, and then overhead percentage, which we'll talk a little bit about how to calculate that. And then some key times for completing different tasks and creating a customized garment like weeding time average or heat press time average for decorating per layer. And then we'll spend the bulk of our time actually punching in unique information for various jobs and kind of walking you through how to use this calculator and ultimately so it'll kick out a cost per piece. But I want you to understand a little deeper than just typing in the info, the concepts that go behind calculating costs. So we're going to spend a good portion of our time walking through that. And here is what I use as a basic cost calculation formula. So we're going to start at the very high level of things, and then we'll work our way down. And I haven't looked at the questions, but if you're asking if this presentation is going to be recorded, yes, I am recording it as we deliver it here today. For those that attended live, I will email you a link to the presentation afterwards. Now, this is our first time giving this one, so I'll need to give Joe and our video production team time to edit it, so you won't receive this probably till early next week to review. So let's go through the cost calculation formula. So number one is we have our cost of materials, and we'll discuss what goes into that. After you have cost of materials, we have our direct labor cost. So direct labor costs are costs that go into the actual manufacturing of the CAD-CUT transfer to apply to the garment. That cutting, that weeding is the majority of our direct labor costs. And then, of course, we have overhead expense that a lot of people leave out of the puzzle. Some only calculate cost by figuring out their cost of material. Some add the labor cost to it as well, which is a step in the right direction. But usually, no one gets all big 3 components. And so we want to encourage you after this session, you need to calculate not only cost of material and direct labor costs, but overhead, and that gives you a picture of total cost. And that's what that cost calculator is designed to do, is to capture total cost. So with that in mind, let's dive specifically in to cost of materials and calculating that piece of our cost calculation formula. I'm going to try to slow down and take pauses. I tend to talk fast, I know, so I'll try to keep it at a reasonable pace here today if you're taking notes or trying to grasp the concepts. Okay, so cost of materials. This is what we're trying to calculate. Basically, the 2 key components that go into cost of material is your design cost, which is basically in the CAD-CUT process, you know, we are cutting things out of a roll of heat transfer film, we're weeding away the excess, and every square inch of material that was utilized in that job, whether it went in the garbage, in the scrap drawer, or onto the garment, impacts design cost. So it's our actual cost of material that we're looking for that went into making that transfer, or those 12 transfers or however many you cut out of your specific roll of CAD-CUT material. Now, when you're looking at landed cost, it's important to calculate freight, and we're going to show you an exercise in the next slide on how to get your average landed cost for CAD-CUT materials. So you shouldn't just look at your supplier's catalog, hopefully your supplier's Stahls, and say, that material costs $5 a yard. So that's what we're going to put into our equation. No, you need to calculate the $5 per yard plus the freight cost that goes into getting that material into your business. Also, in addition to that, once we have our cost of our design, including waste and freight, we need the landed cost of the blank garment. So whatever we're decorating on, this all goes into our cost of materials. So the price of the t-shirt with the freight included to get it there, the price of the track jacket, the fan jersey, whatever it may be. Those are big components we're going to step through to get cost of materials. Let me erase my drawings here. Okay, So step number one, and the easiest step in that, is finding your landed cost per garment. And I'm going to caution you on some pitfalls of basically giving your profit to a freight company, which we don't want to do. A lot of people worry about the freight costs on rolls of CAD-CUT material but overlook freight costs on garments. So the CAD-CUT process in general, of course, is designed to work well for low to mid quantity runs. It's not really a technology that you want to use across, a 1,400 piece order or a 1,000 piece order of the same design. That's where screen printing or screen printed transfers come into play. So naturally, when you're working with CAD-CUT heat transfer films, you're going to be ordering small quantities of garments to decorate for particular jobs, because as we know, with CAD-CUT, we can do as little as one piece. And it's cost effective as long as you don't give away all your profit in ordering the garment. So the example that I have on the screen here, let me highlight a couple key pieces. We see we're ordering a quantity of one piece in this basic t-shirt from Sanmar. We can see the price point for the Texas orange color on this single piece shirt is $1.99. Very good price for a blank t-shirt. Of course, when you're in the checkout process, you can select your warehouse, which impacts your freight rate. Ideally, for those of you that are lucky enough, you have some sort of blank apparel provider close by to you where you can pick up or where they have delivery, something like that. But in the case where you don't live close by to where you don't have to worry about freight, this is really important. If I get that customer that walks in that wants a single piece order now, and I start to look at the freight cost on that single piece order is going to be $11.37 to get that t-shirt. Now, of course, that's going to drive up the total cost per garment to something that is way higher than what you need it to be. So this is just to be aware, if you're going to accept the one-off jobs, you may want to look at actually stocking a certain line of t-shirts in select colors that you can amortize freight over a higher quantity of pieces to get them into your door a little cheaper. So this gives you an example of that. Obviously, you don't want to push all customers up to a 12-piece minimum if they only want one shirt or 3 shirts or 6 shirts. But when you start to get into the higher quantities, of course, that freight cost only goes up by about $1. And now my landed cost per garment is only $3.07. So you need to definitely do some planning in how you group orders and ship orders. For this reason, I recommend you find one primary supplier for garments, and that will allow you to group your orders together. Find somebody that has a wide selection, and that will allow you to group orders together, save on freight. Ultimately, some of the allure of CAD-CUT in having a cutter in-house is that you can cut, heat apply, and give a customer a garment right away or in a very quick manner. But you don't want to get into the habit of having too short of a turn time unless you're inventorying garments, because you're going to want to group those orders to save on freight. So landed cost per garment is pretty simple. It's the number of garments ordered divided by the freight cost to give it there, and then you can get your freight cost per garment added to the actual merchandise total, and we get $3.07 per garment. Landed cost of CAD-CUT material is our next critical piece, so I'm going to give you a tip on how to do that. I think you'll spend more time and effort trying to track back exact cost to ship that roll there than it's worth. So what I would recommend is coming up with a good average one time for your business based off your last 6 orders or your last typical order size with ground freight. That way you can get an average cost per yard. So this shows a good example of one of our most popular products, which is fashion film. This is the product that we would recommend for t-shirt applications. You can get a good level of detail in fashion film, and ultimately you can stock rolls of this into your shop to kind of get your stock color offering and pick and cut on demand. So when you look at a typical Stahls material order, I did a sample one here for fashion film. We can see we have a 25-yard roll of white, a couple 10-yard rolls, and 3 5-yard rolls. And we put the cost per roll for each. This would be like an invoice or a order that's in the cart. Then we figure out how much freight it's going to cost to get that average size order into our door. And then we come up with a total order cost. So if we take the total order cost divided by the number of yards, so I'm not dialing this back specifically to do 5-yard rolls only or 25-yard rolls only. I want to get a good average of the size of rolls that I bring into my shop. So I total this up with the average freight cost to get it to me, and I can see I have 60 total yards So 352.80 divided by 60 gives me an average landed cost per yard for fashion film of 588. So what I want you to do with that number after you figure out what your average cost per yard is to go over to the cost calculator that you'll get. And under the business info, you have the opportunity to type in the specific products that you order. Obviously, it's pre-populated with Stahls materials, and we prefer you order ours. We have good advantages there. But if it's whatever material it is, you can type it in for up to 5 materials that you use in your business typically, and you can type in the average landed cost per yard. When you get this calculator, the average cost per yard that you'll see there is just based on all of the roll increments available from 1 yard increments to 50 yard increments, and we came up with an average. But I would say you do it specifically for your business, and for the exercise we just did, we know it's going to be 588 for fashion film. And if I use glitter and all these other materials, I can figure out the average for that as well. And then ultimately, you need to make sure you specify the roll width so the cost calculator can work. So based on 588 at 15 inches wide, it's telling me I have a cost per square inch of 0.0109. So about a penny a square inch is what it's going to kick out into the calculator portion of this for the fashion film. I'm not going to go through that exercise for all of these materials. You have to trust me that I put in the average cost, landed cost per yard based on the prices that we sell the products for. But before we leave fashion film, I do want to point something out. I want to launch a poll first, I believe. Let me take a peek here. I'm curious, have you ever used fashion film from Stahls? Wow, it's interesting results here. All right, 83% voted, 85%. Okay, we'll close it off. And let me share those results. So almost 50-50. 57% of the listening audience has used fashion film. 43% has not. And so the reason I asked that, of course, part of the benefit of delivering these Stahls TV classes, if I get to, highlight the benefits of the product to you without being so much of a salesman that it gets sickening or waste your time. But I want to point out something here. When we go back and look at the cost factor and the fact that we're a manufacturer direct source for product, take an example of like a 5-yard roll of fashion film. If you are sourcing products for T-shirts or your lightweight product from another supplier, I'm guessing that the 5-yard roll of fashion film is significantly less than what you would pay for a 5-yard roll, especially if you look at colors like metallic silver and neon pink, metallics and neons, where we charge one low price and not an upcharge. So anyways, that was my way of saying take a hard look at fashion film for your T-shirt applications. I realized 43% of you that said no, maybe into one of our other products like Premium Plus or Thermofilm because you do more athletic applications for football jerseys or whatever it may be. But fashion film is a good product for all types of graphics for cotton and poly, T-shirts, hats, pants, etc. Okay, so now we have our average landed cost per yard calculated in, and I want to go through a square inch calculation. So this is all handled in the calculator for you, but there's some thinking you have to do when you get a design size order in. So there's a lot of information on the screen, so I'm going to highlight bits and pieces of it. Before I do that, I'm just going to glance over at my question. Glance over at my questions. Not seeing the picture. Hopefully we have that fixed by now. Veronica, if you could just type yes or no. Hopefully you're up to speed with us here. Okay, good. Just some other notes, not really any questions. How to get the cost calculator is that you fill out the survey at the end, and I'll email you the cost calculator. And the survey comes up at the end when the session closes. Okay. So if we looked at assumed square inch calculation, so this is how most people calculate cost per square inch. They would take the square inches in a yard of material, so 15 inches in a 15-inch wide roll of fashion film times 36 inches in a yard, and you would get 540 square inches in that linear yard of material. If you take our 588 landed cost that we just calculated, divide it by 540, That's where we get our 0.01 cents per square inch that the cost calculator does for you. Now, I just did a simple smiley face design for an example. Let's say a customer walks in, they want this 6 by 6 inch smiley face, or they want a center chest graphic with this design onto their apparel. We look at that graphic, we come up with a size. It may be 6 by 6 inches. So of course, to get square inches, it's 6 times 6 equals 36. 36 square inches in the design times a penny equals 36 cents per design, right? Okay. So that is the way a lot of cost calculators that are out there do it. Unfortunately, that leaves out a very important thing in the heat transfer film or CAD-CUT process, which is waste. So if we look down here, we see that 6 by 6 inch graphic positioned across a 15-inch wide roll of material. And the challenge is we have all this material here that, yes, it can be put into a scrap drawer and reclaimed later by most cutters, but I'm not of the opinion that you don't want to incorporate that material into your cost. I think it's very important that you incorporate any potential waste, because those of you with scrap drawers know that when's the next time somebody's going to come in and want light blue fashion film that's going to fit on that excess material I have left over. We hope to use it, but it's not a guaranteed thing. It may sit in the scrap drawer for a while. So we want to make sure that sunk cost in the scrap drawer that's already calculated into a job and that it's paid for. So let me show you another slide to talk a little bit about that. So that's the assumed square inch calculation. The size of the design by the cost per square inch equals the cost of the design. I believe that is inaccurate. Here is the actual square inch calculation that I just pointed out, incorporating waste. Now, if I'm doing one design, if I know fashion film is the material I'm going to cut it in, if it's glitter flake and it's 20 inches, you need to think about that. But basically, place the design in the context of the material. So the actual cost, all the same factors up top here, but we start to get into calculating the actual material used. So you see we have a visual example here of the actual strip of material that would be used to cut that one design. And the length of that strip is 6 1/4 inches. So if I have a 6 by 6 design, I need to calculate probably about a 20% waste factor for the lean-in edge and where I end the graphic, and I get about 6 1/4 inches long times the full 15-inch width of the roll. Now it's a much different picture. That equals 94 square inches. I do my math. If I'm doing one design in that space, I get 94 cents per design, so nearly 3 times the cost. So the point of this lesson is make sure that you're incorporating waste into the process. Now you may say, like I would, it would be just as cost effective to cut 2 designs out of that material at the time of getting the job. So how about offering the customer an additional discount on 2 shirts, or setting a minimum quantity of 2 so I can do a better job nesting and utilizing material? Or how about offering the customer a sleeve print or a back shoulder print or something that I can at least nest up and leverage this material so I can add more money to the selling price without increasing my cost. I'm just using what would be in the scrap drawer anyways. So work to efficiently utilize your material. So this shows you an example of that. Of course, if I can get 2 up, if they're 6 inches, I can only fit 2 across a 15-inch wide roll, so I still have a little bit of waste, but not as much. Now it's still the 94 square inches used, but now I'm dividing it by 2 designs, which only cost me 47 cents per design. So I like to call that smart nesting, or thinking about your size of your design and how many you can fit across your material. Okay, hopefully you're with me. The next big thing that I wanted to say is there's also something I like to call smart sizing. So a customer usually doesn't know what size they want their design. So you have a little leeway when you are proposing a design size or sizing for the garment. So it makes perfect sense to make sure you create sizes that can be multiplied to equal your material width to make efficient utilization of your material. So in this sample, what I would do if they came in and wanted a center chest design, instead of proposing a 6 by 6 inch graphic, how about proposing something that's 4 3/4 inches? Odds are they're not going to care if it's a little bit smaller, and that will allow you to nest up a lot more designs. So the smaller you can keep your design concepts, the better. So if you're just coming up with a concept for, let's say, AG High School, rather than proposing this concept that has AG High School really big across the front center chest, why not propose something a little more understated like a left chest graphic? So where you can, try to keep your graphic sizes small with the CAD-CUT process, and also try to work with sizes that can be nested efficiently across the material, so you can reduce your cost per design. So this gives, you can do the math here with me if you want, but it's the same thing. A penny a square inch times the square inches utilized, which is a little bit smaller since we reduced the width of the design, divided now by 3 designs, which is perfectly nested, so I get my optimal cost of 24 cents per design. I don't know what volume your shops are. What I would recommend is you don't send a job to the cutter every time you get a job. I would recommend that you try to group like orders, get your stock products, your in-stock colors out on display so you can drive customers. Maybe you get 4 customers during the course of a day into your store that want to buy CAD-CUT designs, and we can drive them into white, neon pink, metallic silver, all of our stock colors, so we can nest customers' jobs together as well. But you want to utilize the full material where possible. It's a pretty basic concept, but one that needs mentioned. So here's what we have in summary for our cost calculation. Remember, what we were trying to find is the cost of the materials, which was the first piece of it. So our design cost, based on the landed cost of $5.88 on fashion film, and doing it 4 3/4 instead of 6 inches, was 24 cents per design. Our landed cost of the blank garment was $3.07 based on the dozen order. So you get your cost of material of $3.34. So the cost calculator would calculate that, but I want to point out something on the cost calculator. It won't calculate right now, but when you go to enter your design size for placement number 1, which in this case would just be a single color graphic, if it was the first example, instead of entering 6 by 6 for the design, we want to make sure we enter 6 by 15, which would be, even though it's only a 6 by 6 design that's going on the shirt, we want to enter what will be utilized, how much material is going to be used based on those design dimensions. So let me look over here to make sure there's no questions on that. Okay. Good. You're right. Tony caught me. My math's wrong. I did some of this late night last night. Yeah, so 307 plus 324 is not 334 if you're playing along at home. It's actually 331, so my apologies for that. Good catch. Okay. So let's jump back to the cost calculation formula. So we've covered cost of materials, which was piece number 1. Let's move to labor costs and talk specifically about how to calculate that second piece of the puzzle. And now we're talking about direct labor costs, which there is a difference. Direct labor costs are something at the bottom of the screen there. You see it's labor used to produce or manufacture the actual decorated product. So some examples of direct labor costs that you want to capture are cutting, weeding, heat application, and perhaps art creation. And I have some ideas how you can break art creation out of the process and kind of look at that independently as a service that you offer that we'll talk about. But let's capture cutting, weeding, and heat application. So I know this is text heavy, which I usually don't like, but it's the way it has to be for this one. So let me walk through it for you. So the direct labor cost, basically what we need to get to is we need to figure out how many minutes it takes to complete each particular step of the process multiplied by our labor cost per minute. So we want to start by getting our labor cost per minute, which is actually at the bottom of the screen. So our labor cost per minute may be different for cutting and weeding than it is for heat application. This is really how much you're paying the person that's completing these tasks. So if your heat application person's making $12 an hour because ultimately they can ruin a garment, put that in there for your heat application and calculate your labor rate per minute for that. If the cutting person, whatever the rates are, input them. If you're doing all this work yourself because you're one of those 1 to 3 people shops, find out a fair rate that you want to pay yourself for those tasks. Don't leave it out because you're doing the work yourself. You have to pay yourself money. Ultimately, you'll return money from the business, but pay yourself for completing the tasks that create the finished product. So I think somewhere around $10 to $12 is a good sort of average labor rate for cutting, weeding, heat application tasks. Because ultimately these are really important positions to the process. So if we take $12 an hour divided by 60 minutes an hour, we get a cost of about 20 cents per minute. Okay, if we look at this smiley face design and it takes a minute for cutting, weeding, and heat application each, we know we have 3 minutes of labor, and it's going to cost me 60 cents in labor for that job, in direct labor costs. So the reason I didn't include art creation, it's so hard to attribute an art creation cost that can be like automated for every job, because some jobs a customer's coming in with a logo that's drawn on a cocktail napkin, or on their cell phone that they took a photo of something that they want designed, and other times somebody's coming in and picking a template or a design off the wall. So what I always prefer to do when it comes to art costs is basically that's unique per job, and bill it out as $25 a half hour or some rate per half hour, to where it's part of the setup to getting ready to print a job. Okay, so that gives us our cost of materials and labor costs. Now I want to show you, let me jump back to the cost calculator here. Under the business info, we did step one, right, where we put our cost of materials in. Now we want to do our labor costs. So this cost calculator allows you to put in an hourly rate that you're going to pay to your heat press employee, which we just talked about. So we said $12, and then we're going to pay an hourly rate to our weeding employee. In this case, the weeding employee we're assuming is the same one that's also the cutting employee that's loading the cutter. So we're going to set them up at $12 an hour as well. And then, of course, you need to have the average time it takes for you to weed one layer. You can change this for a job if you have a good gut based on the complexity of the design per job. But a lot of times I recommend businesses just put their average time to weed the range of designs they do, and their average time to heat press the range of designs they do per layer. And so I think 2 minutes is a good average to weed a design, and I think a minute's a good average per layer for heat application. So if you have a multicolor application, it's going to calculate a minute per layer into the labor cost. Overhead is what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so when we look at overhead, this is the piece of the puzzle a lot of folks miss, and there is a lot of costs that can happen here. So basically, we need to calculate overhead. So I prefer to calculate an overhead percentage, just like I prefer to calculate averages. That way I don't have to spend a lot of time on specifics for each job. It's simple, averages. So basically, overhead includes indirect costs. You see the bottom paragraph, costs such as accounting, advertising, indirect labor, which would be like sales staff, marketing staff, management staff. Indirect meaning they're not directly involved in the manufacturing or the production process of the product. Insurance, interest, legal fees, rent, repairs. This is a start of a list to calculate overhead. But what I would recommend you do is figure out all of your overhead costs for the period of a month or a quarter, whatever they are, between salaries and rent for the type of location you're in, and try to arrive at an overhead percentage. So here's a equation for overhead percentage and calculating an overhead rate, which leads to a percentage. So basically you take your indirect expenses, which were all of those things we just talked about, and you divide that by your direct expenses over the same period. So if you had rent and salaries of, for instance, $3,000 for the period of 1 month, along with advertising costs and everything, those would be your indirect expenses. And then our direct expenses would be like how much we paid if we were to take that weeding and that heat press operator for an 8-hour shift and multiply their hourly rate that contributes direct to the production process, as well as all of those direct expenses for the month. So we take our indirect expenses and divide it by our direct expenses, and we can arrive at an overhead rate. So for instance, if we take 3,000 divided by 10,000, we get an overhead rate, or we get overhead of 6,000. Let me say it one more time. I did the math wrong here. Okay, so this number, I'm going to correct. I forgot to update my sheet here. So this should actually be 3,000, okay, not 6,000, because what we're going to do is we're going to take our indirect expenses of 3,000, which are listed here, and divide that by our direct expenses of 10,000, which are listed here. And that equals our overhead rate of 0.3. In order to get our percentage, we'll take the 0.3 times 100, and that gives me my overhead percentage of 30%. So I don't really have an industry average for overhead percentage because there is such a range. If you're operating out of your home with a small number of employees and salaries and limited advertising and it's only word of mouth, you may be closer to, say, the 10% overhead percentage. If you have a large retail storefront facility and you have salespeople that are out on the road and you have a pretty big marketing budget, maybe you're closer to 30 to 50%. But ultimately, you need to come to some sort of overhead percentage for your business. We prefer that you actually calculate it using this formula. And obviously, this is tough to teach accounting principles in a short class. So what we've done is on this cost calculator, there is a helpful info tab, and there is a calculating overhead percentage link to a MissouriBusiness.net site, which I think does a really good job of walking you through the process of calculating overhead percentage for your business, going through the formulas in depth and explaining why. So I'd recommend you visit that to get this calculation. In the meantime, we're going to go with what we've calculated here at 30%, which is, for a good, probably, I would say, 4 to 9 employees with a decent marketing budget. The industry average is 15%, obviously, because most of you are 1 to 3 employees, probably operating out of your home or with very little overhead. And we have a lot of customers like that use vinyl cutters and heat presses. It's part of the beauty of the process. But put it in there. You don't want to lose track of that because it adds quite a bit to the overall cost. For example, if we take our direct costs to get our overhead for this particular job, which is what we're trying to get, we're going to take our direct cost for the job, which of course was our cost of materials plus our direct labor of $394, and we're going to multiply that by our overhead percentage of 30%, and we get $1.18 in overhead on this particular 12-piece job that needs to be added to the cost. I'm sorry, not the overhead of the job, it's the overhead per piece. So we're trying to get to a total cost per piece. If we take our 3 components, cost of materials, labor costs, and our overhead, then we have a total cost per piece to make this customized t-shirt with the smiley face on the left chest of $5.12. And I'm guessing that is higher than most of you would have thought the cost would be for that type of thing because you're not accurately calculating labor or overhead. Let me fly out to see if there's any questions about that. I think you guys are pretty quiet on the questions here. Okay, good. By the way, I'm really excited. We have a ton of attendees on today, so feel free to talk to us. If this is your first Stahls TV session, we encourage interaction. Okay. So that's a little bit about cost calculation, and then I just want to go completely through the cost calculator before we input some specific jobs and talk more about setting selling prices after we calculate costs. So let me just review what we've talked about so far because I think we're ahead of schedule. Okay, so step 1. Input your materials and your average landed cost per yard, as well as the roll widths for the materials. In this case, we've input 5 of our most popular materials at Stahls: Fashion Film, which is our t-shirt product; Premium Plus, which is our stretch and performance wear product; Thermal Film, which is great for athletic jerseys and contact sports and dye inhibiting; Glitter Flake, which is, of course, our #1 selling bling product. Everybody loves Glitter Flake; and Fashion Film Electric, which comes in almost metallic foil-like colors. It's a good sort of alternative to Glitter Flake if you want to step up into special effects for men's apparel. Then we completed the specific data for our business with our overhead percentage, our hourly rates, our average weeding times per layer, and our average heat press times per layer. At that point, I would encourage you to save this so you don't have to set it up every time to wherever you want to store it on your local PC. And then when you open it moving forward, you'll just have to open the cost calculator tab. So if we're to step through the cost calculator itself as a final review, let's take that simple, actually let me bring up another example of a job and we'll do that. Let's take this Blackhawks design that you see here, where we have a 2-color design that has a black layer that's 6 inches by 12 inches and a silver layer that's 2.5 by 12 inches. could be cut out of fashion film for basic t-shirts, since that's what we recommend. So we're going to use those dimensions here. So number one is we have 2 total cut designs per garment. Since this is a 2-layer job, I want to make sure I capture weeding and heat application costs for each layer, because that's how the CAD-CUT process works. You need to do the same work for each layer. So I had 6 by 12 inches for my black layer. I know my fashion film material is 15 inches wide, so I'm going to input 6 by 15 inches because I know otherwise that 3 inches of waste that we talked about is going to go in the garbage or in the scrap drawer and not be accounted for. And then my other design was 2.5 by 12 inches for the metallic silver layer, so I'm going to type in 2.5 by 15 once again, just to accommodate the full width and the waist. So those are my design dimensions for my 2 particular layers or placements. Now if I had something on the back of the shirt, I could enter that as well. The next thing I want to do is enter a cost for my blank. In this case, I believe I've recorded it here on the slide. This basic red t-shirt at the dozen price is about $1.99. Note how 2X, 3X, 4X are upcharged, so you want to make sure you add a couple dollars to 2X or a few dollars to 3X. That's what I recommend doing. Just put that on your proposal that those extra large garments, they cost more money, so ultimately charge $1 per X. So we're going to use $1.99. Let's say these are standard sizes. And by the way, that is a sale price that was available when I clipped this information, so it might be more than that usually. Okay, and then at that point, almost forgot. I didn't include the landed cost of the garment, so let's just say the freight on it, the freight on order of 12 is $12, so I'm going to make it $2.99 because you need to make sure, as it says out here to the right, this should be the landed cost of the garment, and I'm not inventorying t-shirts at my business, let's say. Total number of garments sold for this job, say there's a dozen that want it for a Blackhawks t-shirt. Then it's going to calculate everything. So step 2 is you're going to review the costing info. Okay, so let's step through it. So the fashion film material cost for both layers is going to be $1.39. Grab my spotlight tool. $1.39. The heat press labor cost based on my averages and the number of layers is going to be 40 cents. The weeding labor is going to be 80 cents. The overhead is calculated at $1.67 based on our 30% overhead percentage. And then our landed garment cost is just going to travel down here at $2.99. So adding all of those cells together gives me a total cost per piece of $7.25. And then it kicks out a total job cost based on the number of garments in the particular job that I've input under the total garments. That's why it's important that you complete all of the fields. Okay? And then I'm able to glance down very quickly and say, I wonder how much that job would cost me in Glitter Flake. And what I always love to show people is I can give that customer, if these are, let's say these are girls' t-shirts or whatever, $7.25 for fashion film is my cost, but if I can upsell them to Glitter Flake, it's only going to cost me another 87 cents in material costs. Plus you may up your labor slightly in averages, but if it's all averaged out because it's a product I stock, now I know I can command a much higher price for a special effect or a glitter or fashion film electric finish than I can command for a basic finish. So that's where you really start to make more profit per piece, is when you start to drive in these special effect finishes or higher end garments. So that is a quick example of calculating the selling price, or calculating the cost per piece. Now the next step is inputting selling prices. So I want to launch another poll here. And I want to know, before we get into the section, put you on the spot, what describes your general strategy to setting prices? So read down through those. This may take a couple more seconds to respond. And it's okay if you don't have a real strategy right now. I know that's why you're here. And I guess if your strategy is not on there, don't even answer it. All right, close to 76%. Give you about 5 more seconds here. All right, 78% voted, so we'll close it off and share those results. Interesting. Very, very mixed bag here. So we have 27% that are using keystoning, which we'll talk about, which is doubling the cost. 34% use a set markup or a gross profit margin. 18% just kind of look at it and price it for what they think. And 22% is no strategy. Wow, that's quite the mix. Okay. Okay, so let me walk you through each of those sort of pricing strategies and give you what I believe, and everybody has a different strategy. But you'll notice on the calculator that I have input selling price, where you have to manually input. It's not going to generate it for you. So let me walk you through why that says that. So first we'll go through an exercise real quick. Based on your pricing strategy or just based on what you're thinking right now on demand, I kind of want you to put in a selling price for this item. You see I have the cost per piece at $5.35 based on the factors here. What do you think this t-shirt with this design on it would sell for in a quantity of 12 pieces? What would you charge a customer? So just type that into the questions box for me. I just want to get a general gauge. All right, you guys can stop now. Thank you. So I have a whole bunch at $12. I have some couple at $15. I have some up at $20. Some 13s, 18s. I have one as low as $7.49. Anyways, so the question was the price, how much you would sell this shirt for, given the cost of $5.35. So we have anywhere from $10 to I think $20 on the high side, and then some low offers there, $7.50, $30. Okay, interesting. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll go through all of them. All right, let's take a look at this. So now we're going to upgrade a little bit. This is a long sleeve performance wear tee, so it's a moisture wicking polyester. It's the same design, but now we're putting Premium Plus on it, which is just a performance wear stretch material. Same exact design and dimensions. The cost based on running it through the calculator was $9.58. How much would you sell this piece for? Go. Okay. And stop. All right, so we have a lot of $22, some 20s, good bit of 25s. I think the highest I'm seeing right now is 28. I see a 1995, which is always an interesting way to hit that 1990 or 1995 mark. 28.95 maybe the highest. Okay, good. So anywhere from 20 and up, I think there's a couple $17 or $18 ones. All right, let's go to the next one. I think there's two more of these. All right, so this one is a fan jersey. All of these are from Sanmar, by the way. This is a same design, but now it's in glitter material. The cost per piece is $13.82 based on the cost of the garment and the calculator factors. What would you sell this for? Go. Okay, give you a couple more seconds. All right, stop. All right, let's see. We got a range of, see some $25, a good bit of 25s and 27s, 28s, 30s, lots in the 30s. Somebody quantified where they live or are located, which is always a good thing because it's $35 because girls go crazy over glitter. I agree. I see as high as 38. I see a $34.99. I think 38's the highest. So anywhere between 25 and 38. All right, and this is the last one. Then we're going to talk about all of them. right, so this is a Port Authority soft shell jacket, polyester, 12 pieces. It's a wind-resistant jacket. Just CAD-CUT material. Could be thermofilm, fashion film, whatever you're putting on it. The cost to make this, with the cost of the jacket that you see on the bottom of the slide, is $38.28. That's the material, labor, everything. What would you sell this for? Go. All right, the highest so far. I got a couple $90 ones. Huh. I like this. I got a $60 one from Erica, but she says it would not sell. Yeah, so this might not even be something that you'd offer if you don't think it would sell in your area. It depends on your market. I got a lot of $50 to $60 ones, some 65s. So I'd say anywhere between 50 and 90. And so 50 to 90, some are saying that they're using their certain markup and telling me what that is, 75. Okay, so the point of this exercise, one, is for you to analyze how you would price something versus your colleagues, or whatever way you look at it, your competition. Obviously, you probably have a better gauge on competition in your area, but we have, hundreds of people on today that are typing in things. So it's interesting to say that T-shirt number one, which was a basic T-shirt, went anywhere from $10 to $20 from different people with the same design. The long sleeve performance tee, which was number two, went anywhere between $20 and $29. The fan jersey had a really big range from $25 to $38. The fan jersey with glitter, and then the jacket that we're looking at here had anywhere between $50 or $90. So there's many different business strategies, many different pricing strategies, and ultimately you guys are all trying to win business. Maybe you don't want to win every job, but you want to win things that are profitable for your business. So I want to walk through some pitfalls of the different pricing strategies and then give you my recommendation. So we just worked through this exercise, and this is the keystone pricing strategy. So based on the cost, that would put us at about $20 for the performance tee that most people thought could sell between $20 and $29. So it'd be on the low side. The T-shirt, we said, could sell between $10 and $20. The keystoning method would put us at a price at $10.70. Once again, on the low side. The fan jersey, we said between $25 and $38. The keystoning method would put us at about $27.64, so just above the low side. And then the jacket at $38.28 to sell for $76.56 would put us somewhere right in the middle. Or for those of you that said $50 or $55, perhaps the keystoning method in that case could even price you out of the market, similar to the point that Erica made that it wouldn't sell in her area at those sort of prices. So that is something to consider with the keystoning method. I used to promote the keystoning method in my early days. After I got a chance to visit shops and even do a little bit of work heat pressing, I realized that the keystoning method can leave you short. Because if you look at accepting these jobs with these materials, really we're looking at about the same amount of labor to produce each one. We have the same basic cutting and weaving time. It may fluctuate by a minute here or there, 20 cents here or there, depending on the specific material that we're using. We have the same basic heat application time because the graphics, apply anywhere between 6 and 20 seconds, depending on what you're using. We may just have to change our temp a little bit based on the fabrics that we're printing. But all in all, the same cost to produce here, because in the CAD-CUT process and heat printing, everyone needs to be weeded, everyone needs to be prepared for application, and every single layer and step needs to be applied for every garment. There's no economies of scale here if we get into higher volume orders. Okay, so that's keystone pricing. I'm not a big fan because I think it leaves you short in a lot of cases. So here is the markup percentage or gross margin pricing. Now, in a lot of industries, gross margin seems to work, and perhaps even in screen printing or what you're used to, where you can get some economies of scale. But when you look at heat printing and embroidery, I'm not a huge fan of markup percentage or gross margin myself. Obviously, I don't think it works across everything. Here's what we would do if we set a 40% markup or 28.5% gross margin. There's just not a whole lot of consistency when we apply that, even if it's 100% markup or let's say like a 70% markup, which would be probably around a 40 to 50% gross margin, we may leave ourselves short. So those that said 750 on the t-shirt, you may be using a markup or a gross margin perspective. Ultimately, it just doesn't make sense to me that I'm going to make $2 for the time in printing a t-shirt, whereas, with this strategy I can make $6 for a fan jersey, $4 for this. So there's not a whole lot of difference in what you can make. What I prefer, and where I wanted to get to today, was the strategy that I recommend, which would be incorporating a minimum profit per piece and taking into account a market value. And I'm sure if you're using keystoning or the gross profit margin, you always have to take into account market value, because even if that shirt says with gross margin that it should sell at $7.50, you may say, I can get 12 bucks out of this and raise the price. I get that. But let me give you my strategy here. So if we have the same amount of work going into just about every single item that we decorate with the heat press, I think we should, as business owners, want to establish a price or a profit for every piece that we're going to decorate. So every time that heat press locks down, we need to work to increase the value of what it's locking down onto. So there are some real distinct ways that you can increase the value. Notice I kind of put the market price as I thought before we entered this session based on the conditions, so you can see my opinion of what things should sell for in this range. So the t-shirt, I thought it could sell for $15.35 at 12 pieces. I don't think screen printers could really compete with that, because they don't want to set up to print 12 pieces typically. So really my minimum profit per piece, I'm recommending at $10. I don't really want to spend my time locking the heat press down unless I'm going to make $10 a piece. This is especially important for you businesses that have 1 to 3 employees. Think about it. Your time is valuable. If you're spending time at the heat press printing shirts for $2 or $5 in profit a shirt, you're not spending time out selling, out marketing, doing all the other things you need to do as a business owner, wearing multiple hats. That's why I like to make sure if I'm going to spend time at that heat press, or if I'm working a 9 to 5 and I'm going to spend my time in the evenings, I want to make sure it's spent on heat printing profitable pieces. It's going to take a minute to press it anyways. I might as well make as much profit per minute as I can, which ultimately says that I need to sell higher-end garments, higher-end finishes, and try to promote that aspect. But if they want to buy a t-shirt, they can. I'll make $10 a piece. Now let's travel over to the performance shirt. So it's the same sort of thing. I'm a fan of setting a minimum profit per piece, not just in general for your business, but based on the type of items. So I'm going to bounce over to my next slide here, a little in advance. So my business strategy would be for basic finishes or transfers, like I want a minimum of $10 a piece. If I'm going to mess with glitter and special effects, I know that they can command a higher market value. I think we need to make a minimum of $15 a piece. And then I can bounce that off against a second set of rules, which means basic tees, $10 a piece. If I'm putting a basic finish on a performance apparel, if I'm printing performance apparel and taking that risk, it's something that's not highly competitive. Not a lot of people are printing performance apparel in my experience. I can command a higher profit per piece. And then the high-end items, if I'm going to spend time on that, I want it to be a little bit more. So with that in mind, let me go back a slide. So this one obviously falls into a basic finish, but on performance apparel. So with my minimum profit per piece, I'm looking at $9.58 plus $15. So at a minimum, I would sell that garment at $24.58. But I was on the high side on this one, I guess, from the 20 to 29 range that you identified. $29 a piece is going to deliver more profit back to my business, and perhaps I can put in some volume breaks there. But either way, I believe 20 is selling yourself short on performance wear. By the way, I think it's interesting. Let me launch my last poll here, which is how many people are printing performance wear? Do you heat print performance apparel? I'm just curious. You can kind of stack up against those people you work with. If you come into Stahls TV sessions, we've been teaching and teaching how to print performance apparel, so perhaps you are. All right, 70% have voted. All right, I'll close it off. share the results. So the whole point here is you're amongst a group that likes to come and get educated on how to do things, but even amongst this group of people that like to be educated, only 52% of the listening audience is printing performance apparel. So your competition is cut in half versus, I'm sure if I launched how many are printing t-shirts, it would be 100% yes, unless you don't have a heat press yet. And then there's people that never tried it or had problems. And for those of you that had problems, we'd encourage you to register for a heat printing performance wear, and we can help you with that. Okay. So anyways, that gives you a cost per piece of the long sleeve t-shirt. As you see, I'm using a glitter finish here, so I'm following my $15 minimum profit per piece rule, which puts me around $28, $82 or $29, and I bumped it up to $35 because I just think a fan jersey with a design on front can command $35. Perhaps if it has a name and number on the back that says the kid's name and then a number, I believe it could command upwards of $45. And then lastly, for the jacket, I maybe sold myself short here a little bit, but I agreed that it just didn't seem like that high end of a jacket to me. For the cost per piece of $38.28, I felt like $59 was a good price point. That puts me at my $20 per piece profit. So the point is, I can print a basic t-shirt with my minute at $10 in profit per piece, or I can focus on trying to sell items like performance wear, glitter finishes, jackets, some of the higher end items, and generate more profit per piece for the most time. Now that won't make sense if you operate on a gross profit margin. You'll be like, wow, that jacket's only at, let's just say 20% gross profit margin, and the t-shirt's at 60% gross profit margin. If you look at just the gross profit, you'd be saying we need to sell more t-shirts. But if you think about the production process and the amount of time it takes for every piece, you don't want to focus on what's more profit margin versus the other. You want to focus on the actual profit per piece that you're printing for the time that you're investing. Let me take a look over at the questions. Okay. All right, question for later. If the customer brings in apparel items, what's the general rule if things mess up, etc.? So yeah, if somebody wants to bring in items, it's almost like you need to have them sign off on a waiver or buy insurance or not buy insurance, kind of like you ship a package with UPS. Now that's kind of joking, but really if somebody brings in items, I'm not a big fan of that because I think one of the biggest profit opportunities is being able to make margin on the garment. And so if you're tying up your time, I think you should be able to make margin on the decoration and the garment together. If they bring in the item, it significantly reduces your profit opportunity and elevates your risk. But if you must do that, and that's something you need to do in your area to service your clients, what I would recommend is with the heat press, test a small inconspicuous area on the garment to make sure it's not going to be heat sensitive or have any issues. And then after that, I would just stick with the materials that you know and love and trust for durability to make sure you're not going to run into any issues. And I would never accept an item that's already been laundered because you can get fabric softeners and things that will impact adhesion. Yeah, so Michael uses a limits of liability statement by them. Yeah, I think that's always a good idea. You want to eliminate the risk for ruining their item, especially if it's something like a leather jacket or, something that's high end. Pricing a pair of customized shoes. The going rate I know for customized shoes is anywhere between $10 and $20 to customize shoes. So I would recommend that you price at a minimum of $10 upwards of $20. Okay, and there's a question of whether I recommend using 0.99 instead of like full numbers, so $19.99 instead of $20. I can't say I've done much research and studying here to know what to really recommend. My gut says that I usually like to price things that end in somewhere between 90 and 99. I just think, you're only sacrificing anywhere from a penny to 10 cents of profit, and it makes it look a little better. Okay, problems with heat presses leaving mark on performance apparel. That's why you need to use Premium Plus because it's a low temp material. All Travis does is performance apparel. That's great. Okay, yeah, good question. How do you calculate for fundraising? So This is the same thing with fundraising, meaning you want the customer to be able to make some profit as well. Before I answer that, I just want to make sure somebody typed in that they're losing audio off and on like crazy. Thinks I have faulty audio here. Can you type in if audio good or audio issues, if I'm cutting out or not? Okay, so it's a mix. So overall it looks good, a lot of goods. So if you're having audio issues, there's the potential it may be on your side and your connection speed. Once again, this is recorded, so if you attended here, you won't have the opportunity of asking your questions when you watch the recording, but at least you'll have a copy of it, which is definitely good audio. So apologies if you're having that inconvenience. Okay, yeah, so anyways, I was getting back to the fundraising question. So what I recommend doing is still the same thing. You want to set your minimum profit per piece because you're still locking the press down. But when you're thinking about the market price, you need to get really particular with how you source your items because you want to make sure that whoever's fundraising can sell it for the set price. So usually I know with fundraising, you want to pass a decent percentage back to the school or the dance school or the group or whatever. So I would recommend setting a suggested market price. When you look at that item decorated, here's the MSRP, and let's say for that fan jersey, it's $35. Let me bring my calculator out here. So for the fan jersey, if it's $35, what I would want to do is extend certain performance levels to the customer. So I wouldn't just say you get 40% off on your fundraising and you keep the profit. What I would do is I would set tiered goals. So if you sell $500 or more in your fundraising, you get 20% or 15% of total sales. If you sell $1,000 or $2,000, you get this. So make sure you set benchmarks. But to start, what I would recommend do is I would take your highest discount level. So I would take $35 and I would subtract, let's say our highest level, we want to be 30%. I would know that at the max discount, I'm going to be selling that customer that garment for $24.50. And then I would consult back to my business rules. $24.50 minus $13.82 is about $10 and it's like 68 cents or something in profit. And I know for glitter finishes, I want to make a minimum of $15. So it may be a scenario where I need to look at reducing this to a one-color design, maybe giving a maximum discount of 25%, but I am a big fan of fundraising, and I know it drives sales. And the beautiful part about fundraising is if you can limit the amount of items that you're allowing them to fundraise with or merchandise with, then you can deliver so much more profit back to your business because they're grouping orders. There's a cutoff date. I can order once from my material supplier and save on freight costs. I can order once from my garment supplier when the sale closes and deliver them, 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the fundraiser closes. And then I can personalize them and generate some additional profit, like drop your name on the back for $5. So fundraising, I would see what's the max you can do and then follow your same general rules with your profit per piece. And perhaps if fundraising is a core sales strategy of your business, you have a different profit per piece expectation for fundraising, which helps you kind of drive bulk orders into the heat transfer process. Okay, let me glance back at some more questions here. Okay, so we have calculating, that's answered for fundraising. For jackets, my client wants me to embroider. Yeah, so these principles can be applied to embroidery. So if your customer wants embroidery, usually you have a set number of heads that you're embroidering with. Much like heat printing, you can only do so many pieces per hour. Just the way of the process. You want to drive similar pricing strategies into your embroidery on profit per piece. Michael charges more if they bring an item to them. Should you have them bring in extras if you're printing their own items, and how many? Yeah, I'm really not a fan of having them bring in like basic t-shirts to have printed. They need to go through your catalogs and select from what you offer because you know those products and you know there's going to be good quality and durability. They're pre-shrunk. They don't have special treatments. Yeah, so the markups are valid. All the principles are valid for embroidery as well. Of course, you need to calculate your machine time there as well. If they ask about discount pricing, so what you can do is you can build in pricing tiers where you can make sure your minimum profit per piece is met at the highest discount level. So I typically like to put some tiers into place to where you encourage the customer to make it a 24-piece order instead of a 12-piece order. We're doing well on time, so I'm going to try to answer a few more questions, and then we're going to pick back up. The recording will be emailed early next week. Okay, so if you normally get free freight on your materials, do you stick with the sale price as your landed cost? Yes. So that holds true for garments as well as heat transfer materials. However, I have to say this since we're a heat transfer material supplier, at Stahls we don't do the free freight offer. Some of our competitors do. But what you really need to dive into is landed cost. So we know with those factors, we ended up at $5.88 for fashion film as a landed cost. You're going to pay for the freight somewhere. Ultimately, suppliers that give free freight are just usually rolling it up into the cost of the material. So if you're comparative price shopping, make sure you consider that. Okay. And if you're an online business and you are mailing shirts, do you suggest setting a minimum fee for shipping? Yeah, so shipping policies, a lot of people have different strategies. Like I just said, for our business of heat transfer materials, we prefer just to charge you what it is and offer the lowest price on materials. So a lot of people will make margin on shipping where they'll actually set a flat rate for shipping and make some profit margin on the freight expense. I'm always a fan of a flat rate. It just keeps things simple, and it encourages customers to order more garments in the package. So figure out what way you're shipping and generally how much it'll cost to ship it to your market across the U.S. and then set up a flat rate. And most e-commerce platforms will allow you to set rules based on specific states for shipping, or they'll tie in directly to UPS or the Postal Service or FedEx to populate live rates for shipping as well. And Steve says Stahls shipping is surprisingly low. That's because we are, I believe, the top shipper in Michigan, and so we just pass along the discounts and charge you exactly what it costs. Okay, so let's keep rolling here. We went through that, profit per piece business rules. I want to give you some ideas for some high profit opportunities, and if you have questions about anything we've covered, we can always go back. We'll have some time at the end. But let me give you some high profit opportunities that maybe if you have limited time in your business or you just want to make the most possible profit per piece, you can focus your sales samples and your merchandising and delivery on high profit opportunities. So this gives you a sort of a higher end shirt from Sanmar, and you'll notice that we're mixing in some higher end finishes in the decoration of it. Here we've used fashion film as black as the background layer, and we've combined that with fashion film in metallic gold for the Love Dance, and also with glitter flake for the KDS, so just mixing in a small component of glitter flake and creating a mixed media design. So I'm going to run this through the cost calculator to show you. So let's just say we're doing a low quantity. We're not hitting a dozen, so a piece price of this at $9.99. Let's go through the calculator. I just want to make sure you get all this done. Okay, so cost of the blank garment is $9.99. We have 3 cuts for this design, right? We had the black, the metallic gold, and the glitter flake. So the dimensions for the black was 8 by 10. Another good example, if the black is fashion film, 8 by 10 isn't a really good size. What I would recommend doing is taking that down to 7 1/4 proportionally. That way you can get 2 across the 15-inch material if you're doing 6 designs. So let's make it 7 1/4 by 9 1/2, just sizing it down slightly to nest up a little better. Change my quantity of shirts to 6. The gold material could easily be the same size, but what I would recommend doing is not wasting this bit here in the middle when you cut the metallic gold, so we can condense that down and hit a much smaller dimension, save about 3 inches off of the height of our design. So that would allow me to do it at 7¼ by 6.5 for the metallic gold. And then the glitter is a small KDS that was probably about 5 inches by 3 inches. Now obviously you'll punch in actual dimensions when you're designing this in your software. There's one little fault of the calculator which I'll point out to you. When you're mixing different materials together, you kind of have to pick the higher cost material and just go with it, because it doesn't allow you to like pick that these ones are fashion film and this one is glitter flake. So I always err on the side of higher. So all of my info's in, all of my weeding costs from before are in. So instead of going to the fashion film cost, I'm going to go to the glitter flake cost to make sure I'm completely covered, since I know it's a higher cost material. And adding in all of my factors together with the garment cost, this is going to cost me $18.07 per piece. And then I can look at inputting my selling prices. So this is the piece I didn't show you yet. On the calculator, you can actually input your selling prices, and it'll kick out a profit per piece, which follows the principles I'm trying to show you here today. So if it's glitter flake selling price, it'll calculate off of the glitter flake cost. And let's say we want to sell this for probably $37.99 per piece for a mixed media design on this high-end garment. And then we're going to make $19.92 profit per piece. It'll also do the job, if you're interested, on job profit. So with that, basically, it'll just take your $19.92 times 6 to give you your job profit. And then here's what I like. It brings it back to profit per hour. So you can see how effective the business is being with profit per hour, which basically takes this, if you were to print this type of job all the time at full capacity over an 8-hour shift, this is how much profit you would make per hour. So that'll encourage you to sell more jobs like this and fill your business with these types of jobs. And then if you were to do this over an 8-hour shift, I'd make $2,700 a day if I could keep my heat press and cutters busy with this type of job. Over the course of a work week, I'd make 13 grand. Obviously, this isn't possible with everything, but the point is, if I can get more profit per piece on these types of jobs, I can make more profit per hour. And then just to go to the last tab, which we started, is the equipment payoff trade show tab. Based on this unique job factors, it's telling me, well, I'd have to enter it for all of them, because it takes an average of all of them. So let's just say $37.99 on all the components. It's telling me, based on this $4,100 investment in a heat press and a cutter with all the accessories, I'd need to press 202 pieces just like this job, or 33 or 34 orders like this, which would account for 12 hours in production in order to pay off my investment. So that is, it's real information, real numbers, so it just encourages you to drive towards the higher end finishes, the higher end garments. Let's take a look at another example. One of the highest profit opportunities going right now. We actually have a dedicated Stahls TV class all about how to print these oversized shirts that's going on in December. It's already on the schedule, and if you wonder how do you get to the Stahls TV classes, you just go to stahls.com, and down at the very bottom of the page there's a little Stahls events link and Stahls live online events. And then you can see all the ones we did this week that are already done. There's one next week on heat presses and guided direct-to-garment printing. But the one I want to point out to you is actually all the way on December 4th that I'm delivering all about these billboard crews, how to decorate them, how to design for them, how to profit with them. But for this case, let's run through this example. These shirts are immensely popular. These are the oversized shirts that you see from Victoria's Secret and a variety of other companies. There's a lot of blank apparel suppliers that are providing it. One of the ones we recommend is Pennant Sportswear. Boxer Craft also has one, and a couple other suppliers as well. So the big thing is we're using a ton of material here, okay? So this is glitter flake, and the overall design size of this panel is 9 inches by 28 inches for this particular design. So we're going to put 9 by 28 into our cost calculator. So we're only doing one cut design per garment. It's going to be 28 inches wide by 9 inches high. And I'm going to zero out all these other ones from the last job. These garments sell for anywhere between $15 and $18 depending on the supplier. So pennants, I believe, are $14.99. And let's just say I'm doing a job of, I don't know, 20 for this particular group that's going to football games. Now here's the beautiful part. You get the cost per piece, which seems pretty high, right? These garments are selling all day with basic puff finishes at $50 to $59 a piece. When you add a glitter finish to it, potentially you can upsell it for more, but I wouldn't get greedy on these. I think, to put a price somewhere around $59, that way you have the ability to do it with a fundraiser and offer a certain dollar figure off. $15, you can see we're driving profit per piece in Glitter Flake of $33.46. I think that tells the story. For those of you that were pricing the t-shirt at $7.50, you're only making $2.50 per shirt. You would have to print 13 shirts, 13 t-shirts for every one of these to make the same amount of profit. Free up your time for selling. Focus on things that can make you more money. Let me look at the questions. Okay, so some really good questions here. Okay, so I'll start with this one. At what point would you suggest going with screen printed transfers such as Transfer Express to be cost effective? So this is the beautiful thing about the cost calculator. I want to show you this because this is a really important principle for people that don't even know that screen printed transfers are available. Let me jump back in my PowerPoint here. Sorry. Okay, let me go to... This is the good example. Okay, so when we did this one, we know that to cut this yourself, it was $5.35 per piece with all the factors input to the calculator. That wouldn't really matter if it was 12 pieces or 36 pieces or 5,000 pieces. The price is pretty typical. It won't fluctuate much from $5.35 per piece regardless of the quantity, except to cut, weed, heat apply every single one every time. There's no efficiency picked up. Okay, so remember $5.35 a piece, and I'm going to go over to Transfer Express's website. So Transfer Express is a Stahls company that manufactures screen printed transfers that basically is ink on a sheet that you can just heat press for like 3 to 5 seconds, and you have a screen printed looking garment. So let's say you could definitely create this artwork in their EasyView Designer, which means it would categorize for their Easy Prints pricing. There's also Easy Prints Plus pricing, which means if it's completely custom art that you were sending them, it's a little higher price to incorporate art setup and all those things. But let's just look at a standard Goof Proof, which is their standard ink formula, screen printing pricing. So this was a 2-color design, right? I would have to, of course, add the cost of the blank, which in this scenario was $3. It was $3. So $2.35 is what the transfer piece of it is costing me to cut this, weed it, and get ready to heat apply. So I need to find out where the $2.35 pricing is on a 2-color design here. All right, so if I were to order, let me get my highlighter so you can follow along. 2-color is what we're looking at this row. If I were to get 24 pieces, it would cost me $5.27. I'm cutting it for $2.35, so it's more cost effective to cut it. If I were to get 49 pieces, it would be $3.76. Still more cost effective to cut it as long as you have the man hours to do it. Once I get up into 75 pieces on this particular job is where it's really apples to apples on pricing. So, however, the beautiful thing about Transfer Express is you're not tying up your labor and you're just basically locking the heat press down. The transfers come ready to apply. But most jobs you'll find out that look like this, a breaking point typically when you start looking at transfers is at about 36 pieces where it's $3.76, because someone may say, oh, I'm willing to pay $1 more per print in order to just not mess with the cutting, the weeding, and the heat application. I'll just order a transfer and press these. And that works for basic t-shirts. Now, of course, Transfer Express has glitter transfers, but it's not the same thing as Glitter Flake. So you just want to compare all of the finishes available for custom screen printed transfers. But at the end of the day, you need both. That's the point here. You can't just say, I'm going to cut stuff, I'm going to cut everything. You need to be aware that Transfer Express is an extension of your business, that it basically is your screen printing division. They'll screen print transfers, you just heat press them. It's a very profitable way. So I guess if you're interested in more info on Transfer Express, just type more info TX for Transfer Express, and we'll have somebody follow up with you to make sure you completely understand screen printed transfers if you're not using them already. Yeah, and then Matt makes the point you may be able to get 2 shirts per transfer. So this particular design, I believe we said, was somewhere around like 12 by 8. So you want to look at that too. They have specific sheet sizes that's 11 1/4 by 14. So we would be short of getting 2 designs per transfer, but all this pricing is per sheet. So if it's a smaller design, you can gang up 2 images per sheet and really get 2 designs for the price of 1 sheet. Yeah, Rhonda says, I love Transfer Express. They are a great partner for my business. Yeah, they do an awesome job. Okay. You can mix screen printed transfers with vinyl accents. I don't have a good example here, but I've done that before where I've like heat pressed like a soccer ball and like a splatter design onto a shirt and then come back over top of it with glitter or something and put the team name. That way when I go on site to an event, I have this really cool looking design that's 2 steps. I apply the screen printed transfer and I cut something to customize it. It'll just separate yourself and have cooler designs. Okay, so the billboard designs have primarily puffy ink. Yeah, to date they do. That's because one company's primarily been printing all of the billboard transfers. Speaking to this particular shirt, but I think that you'll start to see glitters and other finishes trending. There's not really a puff CAD-CUT material that'll work across these because you have to press it in 2 steps. So I recommend merchandising some newer finishes. And the reason puff is so popular is because the primary way these are done are in large quantities right now with screen printed puff for like retail stores and resorts. But now it's translating down to the sort of team business or high school level. Okay. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let me see. Okay, so I just wanted to point these out. I'm not going to go through the cost calculator for every single example here, but these are just some ways to make more money. You may be able to pick it up on your screen, but this is a glitter tee from Pennant Sportswear. Also available from J America has one, but they actually put little flakes or metallic threads in the construction of the shirt. So just a way to up the value of the shirt to make more profit per piece. The point here is you don't always have to just up the decoration. You can up the actual garment itself without straying too far off of the path that the customer wants a t-shirt. You can sell them a high-end t-shirt. And then also showing you that when you're looking at making money in a sale and you're already cutting designs maybe for the dance school out of hot pink glitter for shirts, why not merchandise something else they can wear with the shirts, like capri pants, yoga pants, whatever it may be. Okay, so I believe I've covered most of what I had hoped to cover. So I always do this at the end of each session. I am going to stick around and read through questions. Let me leave you with this for those that need to get back to your workload for this lovely Friday. If you fill out the survey at the end, the last question is, would you like a copy of the cost calculator? As long as you fill out the survey questions and select yes to us, yes to that, I will send you the cost calculator because we want your feedback on the session in general as well. And then also, as mentioned, we'll send the recording early next week. So hopefully you have a good understanding now of the 3 important factors that go into calculating costs to make sure you're getting accurate costs for your business. And hopefully we've given you some ideas and things to chew on about setting selling prices to make sure you're making as much money as possible and we're having successful businesses, which is the reason we all started business in the first place. So if you need to log out now, thanks for attending. For those that are sticking around, feel free to type in your questions. I'm going to stick around and answer those. Okay, let's see here. Will the cost calculator work with 2003 Excel? You know what? I'll email the cost calculator to everybody. If for some reason it won't work with your version of Excel, you can just reply to me and I can back save it with the version of Excel you need. Okay, the survey should launch when it closes out. If it doesn't launch for you, you can always email me at josh@CADCUT Direct. Let me just type my email here. See if everybody has it. All right, it's just josh@cadcutdirect.com. If for some reason you don't get the survey, you can email me and let me know. Keep listening here. How much of a discount is average when you provide quantity discounts? Usually I charge the highest premium, of course, on quantities of 6 or less, especially one-offs, because there's a lot of setup and art creation and really indirect costs, such as sales. When you're going back and forth with the customer for a single piece order, there's a lot of maintenance and time there. So I always charge more for the one-offs, of course. And then usually I'll start to show discounts of anywhere between 5 to 10% as you start to step up into the higher quantities. I usually won't get too extreme because if you get a higher quantity, you're still going to have the same amount of work. There's another important point that I forgot to mention with that question that brought it up. If you hit a certain point where you literally don't have the capacity or the man hours in the day to print your jobs, that's another good reason why Stahls is a great partner. So all of the materials that you can order and cut from us, we also sell in our custom cut logos. You can click on custom CAD cut on the website and you can upload your artwork directly to us at Stahls. And basically, if you get this job and you're like, man, I do not have the time right now to cut 200 designs out of Premium Plus for these shirts, let us be your production department. Upload your artwork, we'll quote you a price, cut it for you. All you'll need to do is heat apply it. And that's the cool thing about using Stahls is all the finishes will match. You can cut it yourself or we can be an extension and cut it for you. Walter asks, how can you calculate the price for a customer t-shirt who wants it personalized with an image or text? So typically if somebody just wants a name drop, I'm not a fan of the old way of doing it where you charge per letter because that just doesn't help people with long last names like me. So what I would recommend doing is just set a general pricing to put a name drop on a shirt. I think $10 is a fair price to drop a name onto a shirt. You could probably go as low as $5, but I would start at $10 and see how customers respond. Okay, what's the value of cost on caps with heat transfer or vinyls? You mentioned other things like tees, performance wear, and billboard tees. Yeah, so when you start to get into lower cost items and printing them like headwear or bags, there's not as much profit opportunity on some of these kind of accessory items. So while it may help complete a sale, like if you printed a bag or a hat, I would focus on completing sales with higher end items and not tying up your time too much with some of the lower cost items because there's not a whole lot of markup opportunity there. Okay, do you add landed costs if your order is large enough for free freight? I believe I answered that one already. A Mac version of the cost calculator? I don't, but I think I can probably upload it to a Google Docs or something and still protect it, so I'll look into that. Steve, I think I just answered your question on typical profits in tote bags and gym bags. The cinch packs and the polypropylene bags and sort of the canvas bags aren't extremely profitable, but once you start to get into gym bags or equipment bags for sports, there's a lot more profit opportunity there. Big dance bags, I know that those can go very high. And Andrea recommends you can download OpenOffice for a Mac. It's a free download, and then you can open up the Excel file from there. Thanks. You can use, as far as the upload features for us to make transfers, it's just vector art. So you can upload any vector file format, PDF, EPS, whatever that might be. How do you calculate shipping on the price of a sheet on Transfer Express gang sheet orders without placing an order? I believe once you register for an account with Transfer Express and are logged in, which I don't have my login with me right now, you can actually go into their designer now, which is called EasyView, and actually design something. And I believe when you go to do like a mock checkout from a design there, it will quote you on freight based on your zip code. All right, we'll do a few more questions. And Andrea says, call them. They're super friendly. We agree they are. How do you deal with copyright issues? Customer wants a Seahawk put on a T-shirt. What do you say? I would say that you don't have the license to print that because you don't want to risk your business. So as far as copyright issues, unless you have the license to print it, I would stay away from it altogether. Maybe offer a more generic alternative, like instead of the Seahawks logo, you could put, I don't know what's popular up there, but in Steelers country, which is where I'm from, instead of doing a Steelers logo, we may just put black and gold on a shirt or some other way to show support. Okay. All right, I think I got everybody, so I'm not going to drag it out from here, so please complete the survey. If I didn't get to your question, I apologize. I'll glance back through, and appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we'll see you all next week on the heat press comparison. This has been a Stahls TV presentation. Thanks for attending.